This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. A couple years ago, I went through one of the toughest health episodes of my life. I found myself in a really dark place, and honestly, it felt like the world was caving in all around me. I didn't know where to turn or what to do. I knew I needed something, but it just seemed like nothing was working. In therapy didn't work for me in the past. But then, with the encouragement of my wife, I decided to give today's sponsor BetterHelp a try, even though I was a little skeptical at first. And let me say, it was so different. I connected with a therapist, and simply talking with her helped me lower my anxiety in ways I didn't expect. Sometimes it's just about having someone outside of your family to listen, and BetterHelp made that so easy. What I love most about BetterHelp is the flexibility. You don't have to commit to months of sessions if that's not what you need. Sometimes a few sessions are all it takes to get some relief, to take the edge off, and start feeling a little better. Plus, they have a wide selection of therapists. You can find someone you really click with, and if you don't, you can switch therapists anytime and no extra cost. If you're like me, someone who gets stuck in their head a lot, BetterHelp might be the answer. And right now, if you visit betterhelp.com/sold-separately or use the link in this video's description, you can get 10% off your first month. So give it a try. Remember, you can't take care of anyone else in your life until you take care of yourself.
Auto sequence start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Carly, and my happiness is creating art.
All right, Carly Pandza, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, you too. You too. I guess we should explain the orange tint a little bit. Your favorite color is orange, right?
My favorite color is orange. I've painted my entire office orange. I have orange warm light bulbs in my room. So yeah, it kind of looks like I'm on Mars, and then I'm usually wearing some sort of orange or mustard. So it's not a filter. I mean, it's a filter that I created environmentally, unintentionally, I guess.
No, that's great. That's great. I mean, I think when you're happy with a color like that, you want to have it surrounded, right? You want to have your room like that and just peace.
I think there's like different emotions, or I've read that there's different things connected to different colors.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think orange and yellow, that there's something about bright colors that it's hard to be unhappy when you're around those colors. So I intentionally created I call it my artist layer, my office. So it has an intentional vibe.
There you go. Really got a warm, very warm vibe too. Very inviting.
Yes. Warm light bulbs, warm vibe.
You know, you and I have something in common right off the bat. We both got started using the old family VHS camera for productions back as kids. Yeah.
What was that even called? Do we know what those things are called?
I think it was just a VHS camcorder, I think is what.
Where you put the entire VHS in it and record onto it.
So can you imagine? Back then that's what we did. And you had to then like do the audio in a different way. It was so cumbersome to try to get anything produced.
I remember. I mean, it'd be kind of funny if they tried to make a movie like that nowadays. I feel like I would have major props to the filmmaker. I remember I was doing a video book report on Stephen King's Carrie, because that's the kind of sixth grader I was. And most of the time when I was reading that book, I was everything just like going over my head. Like, I don't understand.
Right.
So I got all my friends together and we were recording it. And whenever we would mess up or there'd be a blooper, I didn't have a computer and I didn't have an editing system. So we would just have to rewind the tape and do our best to perfectly stop at the point and then record over what we just did. So most, like, in my final edit of that video book report, it's about 3 or 4 beginning each scene because
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yep.
that's all we could do.
But props to us for doing it, for taking the initiative to do that. And I think we're ahead of our time.
For sure. And I think it's great when kids do stuff like that, because I think it shows whatever they're naturally interested in. It's before you get to a time where you feel pressure to things have to be productive and it has to be for this. It's more just from this place of pure self-expression and fun and the joy you have when you were a kid.
Yeah. I mean, we should really, honestly, we should be able to tell great stories with our phones, right? I mean, because it's all about what we're telling, not necessarily the equipment, but if it came down to it, we should be able to do that and create.
I mean, a lot of commercials nowadays, and there are a lot of films nowadays that film on the iPhone, like the red cameras on the iPhone, but it's like almost I have so much digital. I mean, digital has opened up possibility for so many people. Like I'm personally a huge fan of actual film, even though it's much harder to film with and it requires a different level of mastery. But I think it's had the gatekeeping of film be open in a way to people in a way that it wasn't before, which I think is really cool.
It is really cool. I mean, because back in the day when we were having to get those big clunky cameras and try to record and make stories, now it's, if you've got a phone, you've got a production studio in your pocket, you know, it's totally different.
Yeah.
What kind of stories did you and your cousins tell back then? Did you like creating little short films and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So, I would do like a video book report. We would just make up sketches. I definitely in high school, I don't remember if I wrote it or my sister wrote it. We did this short called Justified Suspicions, which now that I look back on that film, the title kind of gave away that there was something, there was a character that was clearly the villain, and it was like justified that they were a suspected character. But I remember also me and my sister would get together and we'd do music videos. So we'd pick like our favorite song. And I don't even remember what song she did, but I remember she had like a rose and we had like used the bathroom mirror and she got like some fake eye drops and was like, we were filming like a slow motion tear as she like held this rose. And I think I sang, I think it's Meredith. Is it Meredith Brooks who did that song? Like, I'm a bitch, I'm a lover.
Yes.
And then like I did that song to stand. It shows the differences of our personalities. But we would just get together and mess around and do like, it was really the beginning before cameras. It was talent shows. So I would like be kind of the director, stage manager. I'd be like, okay, you get up there. Okay, you have 5 minutes. Okay, everybody give him a round of applause. I was very bold and bossy. I'm still a little bit like that, but much more, when you're a kid, there's no barriers, right? So there's no like, maybe I should ask people nicely. It's like, no, it's like everybody give them a round.
Right. You got stuff to do. You got
like,
you're the boss.
Adults, we got to move through this vaudeville cabaret.
We're not messing around here. Did you always love storytelling? Did you remember, like as a kid, did you always love great movies and reading and just the idea of story?
Yeah, I definitely did. I journaled a lot. I just remember often when we would have family events, if I was bored or I didn't feel like someone was listening to me, I would like go in the corner and like journal. Sometimes I would do it if I was like moody, be like moody and then go in there like journaling. And I grew up with a lot of great films. I grew up with and same with music. I was like thinking about things my mom introduced me to. Like I was watching the Oscars with someone the other day, and like several people I was watching with had not seen The Wiz. And I was like, are you kidding? I watched that film multiple times when I was a kid. And then I'm like, yeah, it was kind of weird, but like also such a classic. But yeah, I remember, I think it was Jurassic Park 2. I remember getting a lecture from Jurassic Park, The Lost World, or The Lost World, Jurassic Park, a lecture from the grownups, like my aunt and my mom before we went in. They're like, okay, kids, if you get scared, we're not leaving. You better close your eyes and plug your ears. But yeah, I definitely remember, it's funny, some of the films I remember watching, like we watched Labyrinth a lot. That film is like a little intense.
It is for kids. Yeah.
For kids. Like Never Ending Story, Labyrinth, like you watch them now and you're like, this is like a little dramatic,
Yeah.
a little scary. But yeah, from a young age, it started with writing because that was kind of the original medium. And I had this amazing fourth grade teacher, Mr. Kilroy, who I reconnected with a couple years ago. He came to one of my comedy shows,
Oh,
and it
wow.
was just like so cool. Because it's so cool to get to meet teachers and people who have led you and guided you and like really helped shape you into the person that you are.
Yeah.
He would either give us a prompt he would begin the story and have us finish it, or he would end the story and be like, tell me how it got here. And I don't know. I just loved using my imagination. So even though he would only give like a certain amount of lines, I would sometimes staple like 7-10 pages to it, like front and back. Cause I just, went a little wild with it. So yeah, it always started off with like, I knew writing and storytelling. And then as I got introduced to movies, I was like, ooh, you mean you can write for movies and you can do this? But yeah, Spielberg was definitely a huge influence. And I just grew up watching a lot of his films.
It's amazing what really kind of stays with us, from a kid. I always think that's really powerful if you have a movie that you saw as a kid and it sticks with you and kind of you remember that. That's a really powerful movie, if it's something that you carry with you every day, or just think about it, in your own work too. I don't know about you, but I think that's like a way that it kind of brings out how you tell stories. I think, do you get that too? Like the styles, you kind of just start to kind of
as
not
far
copy
as like the influence of what.
Yeah.
What's really funny that you say that. So the very beginning of some of the stuff that I did, I used to walk around and tell people when I was really young that I was a published author ×3, because I would fill up a journal and then I would label it and then I would create my own copyright and write like the name of whatever the publisher was and like a table of contents and like, write really neatly and stuff. But I think what's so cool about that is, as a kid, you don't have this thing of like, well, that's not real and that's not like really what it is to be published. Like for me, I'm like, no. Like I wrote this whole book. I'm an author. And then I would tell people that. But it's like it's kind of cool to think of as a kid, you don't have those barriers to like, I'm an imposter and I can't say this. It's like you just create because that's just what you're doing. But anyway, the reason when you shared about like things influencing, there's definitely some stories and like books that I wrote that I came across that I'm like, okay, so clearly I was watching Jurassic Park at this time because I completely ripped off this entire scene from that film and put it in there and then but just changed it a little bit. But it's like, as a kid, I wasn't like, I'm going to copy this. It's I used it as my inspiration. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that just comes out, like even when you're in a great mood or you're in a bad mood, it's like when that comes out and how you, I think, direct or edit, I think that just, it transforms into the work, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. And I think I watched a lot of comedies growing up and a lot of like whimsical, like adventure, imaginative things. And when I look at most of the stuff I write now, it is that. For sure. And I think that our styles definitely evolve, but there definitely is, it's cool to look at an artist's work and kind of see that who they are and the essence of who they are is naturally infused in the stories that they typically tell or want to tell. I think that's actually pretty common.
Yeah, for sure. That's how you get to know that particular author or director. You kind of know their style, what they like to do, which is really good. You can kind of spot it when you see it. I love this quote on your website. It says, authenticity is the future. I think I know what you mean by that, but can you tell me what inspiration you had on that one, your thoughts?
Oh, I don't remember the exact inspiration, but like we can totally talk about it. Yeah. So for me, I talk about this sometimes on my podcast and like just different things that I've kind of had ideas about, where I talk a lot about like authentic art. And so often, sometimes I'll go see a movie or even I'll talk to a fellow artist and they'll talk to me about how they're doing something. They're working on a certain project, but I can hear the in order to that's there, the strategy of well, I'm making this because I'm pretty sure this is going to sell. Like, this is what is hot in the market right now. This is what people want. But I think that the real gems and the things that stand the test of time and what will have us still have jobs after this kind of AI revolution and things
Right.
like that, and have art still be a thing, and have still people show up to the movie theaters and show up to live theater and show up to comedy shows is telling art and creating art that's authentic. And there's something that is, I think, inherently us and you and me for about each person. But I think it's a matter of knowing yourself and also having the courage to be able to let that authenticity come through your art. That I just think is so important. And I've definitely noticed for myself, I've definitely noticed times where I'm like, oh, like I'm trying to tell this story about this type of character, but it's because I think that I'm supposed to, or I think that it's trendy, or I think it's going to sell, but it's not because it's something like that's like from my heart or like part of who I am, that's like really raw and vulnerable. So that to me is what makes really, really good art. And I think it takes a lot of self-awareness, and it takes a lot of practice and continuing to hone your craft and continuing to put yourself out there. Yeah.
I think I couldn't agree more. I think that's beautiful what you said about, I think that is art, you know, the authenticity of it. Do you think that we've gotten into a position where we worry a lot about if it's going to make money, and because we have to live. So it's like,
For sure.
we want to make beautiful art, but sometimes, do you ever worry about the compromise that sometimes we have to make into, you know, in order to sell a project or to do something that's going to make money, and maybe we drift away from what we wanted it to be in the beginning?
For sure. I think I worried about it a lot more when I was younger. And now that I'm older, it's like I'm just more concerned about taking my career to the next level and taking my art to the next level. And I think there was definitely times where I was really precious or protective when I was younger. And then it sabotaged certain opportunities for me to even see what something could have become. So I think it's difficult to do that kind of level of strategy in the beginning. But like this sounds very like a positive Pollyanna, but I do think that if we allow ourselves to create art that is authentic to us, that we're actually authentically passionate about, and just keep sharing that and keep putting it out there and keep trying to get it sold, or keep like following the evolution and kind of letting go of the attachment, but just being committed to sharing that art or having it sold or getting it published or whatever it may be, I do think it sells. It might not be a huge blockbuster, but I do think that authenticity finds its niche. Authenticity finds its unique group and its fans and its following. And I think that even if people can't put their finger on it, authenticity and passion when it comes to art is so infectious, and it's what people want. It's what has people lean in versus lean out, versus walk out of the theater. So it might not be, you know, the thing that you create might not be the next like huge franchise, but like maybe it's the thing that it will find its audience, or maybe it won't. Like, I think a lot of what it is to be an artist is to trust and to surrender. And there's for me, a very spiritual connection when it comes to the selling of things or the way projects turned out. It's like sometimes you kind of just got to do the best that you can do and keep taking actions and putting it out there, and like let whatever you believe in take care of the rest, because you can't control what's happening in the industry. You can't control when you create something great, but maybe it flops or maybe it doesn't sell as well as you want it to. But you're not true artists, I don't think, give up. They lick their wounds and they heal, they dust themselves off, and they keep creating, because it's like the air that we breathe.
Yeah, that's who we are, right? That's who we are. That's our purpose. I think so. Like you said, it's just about the consistency. Like if something's not working, just keep at it. I think when it ends is when you come to a point where you're like, I just don't want to do this anymore. But if you can just keep going and rest, but just keep going, I think that initially there's finally going to be a payoff.
For sure. And I think that like so often when we do want to give up, it's because, something's happened and we're not letting ourselves rest, or we're not letting ourselves fully heal. Or most of the time, like for me, like context is so important. It's like you can go through the motions of writing or go through the motions of singing or whatever it is that you do as an artist. But if the context that you have is like, what's the point? Why even bother? Why keep going? Like, it's not going to make a difference anyway. Like, probably what you create is not going to be very good. And also, it's not going to be a very lovely experience for you, So I constantly have to check myself when it comes to my context of like, am I just trying to get this audition done? Or am I actually letting myself inhabit this character and have fun and feel alive, which is the reason I got into this in the first place,
Right.
It's like, I feel like it's so easy for us when we're children to naturally have that. And then as we get older, things happen, we make up stories, there's lots of conditioning, and we have to be responsible for continuing to clear that away and clear all that gunk away so that it's like, it's just us and continuing to recommit to why we're doing it in the first place. I think the why for people and for artists is important. And it's like the first thing that goes out the window when something doesn't go the way that we want it to go.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I think as a kid, you can put stuff out like to your point earlier, and you don't get a lot of, the world doesn't beat you up. And then when you get out into the world, it's a whole different story. And that, the world can be nasty sometimes. So that's really, you just got to keep going though. Like you said, you've got to just keep putting out what you believe in and what your passion is, I think. And yeah, it'll find an audience, I think, if you just keep putting it out.
I think so too. And I think community is also really important for artists. I think having fellow artists in your community that you can share things with, that you can, go to when you're like, I don't believe in myself anymore. And what's the point? And I'm so angry and I'm so bitter and I'm so frustrated, and that can remind you of who you are, or that, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. That is community is a big thing, especially when you can bounce things off somebody, because you're going to have bad days and you want somebody that's kind of been through it or been in the trenches with you to kind of help you through that time. For sure. You've been involved in a lot of really cool mediums. What's your favorite, do you think, from writing to filmmaking? What do you
favorite? My favorite medium? That's such a difficult question.
Or do they all kind of merge into storytelling? Are they all kind of...
For me, I think I did come to the realization a few years back, and I'm like, well, ultimately you're an artist. Like ultimately you're a storyteller. This comes back to authenticity. It's, I've gotten frustrated with other artists that I've met where they've had some casting director or some life coach tell them that they should do voiceover. Well, you can't just be an actor. You got to also create your own work. And I actually think that's BS. I don't think that's true at all. If for some person just acting is like their bread and butter and like makes their heart sing, then you can just do that. Like, don't like, just because like it's trendy and other people are like multi-hyphenate doesn't mean that you have to do that. But I feel like my kind of multi-hyphenate was just naturally born from my own curiosity as I kept getting older and as I kept being like, ooh, like what about, well, instead of just writing, like what if I made films? Like, ooh, like this is really fun too. Like, and then when I was in college and I met these theater majors and I was like, wow, these people are weird. And like, but in a good way, like they're my people, like how have I not like, wow, like all of them are just as loud as me. And like, nobody's like telling each other to shush. Like, this is strange. Not that I like was told I shushed my whole life, but I was shushed quite a bit. I mean, a lot of people are, but anyways, and they were sharing with me, like, we're doing this character building class and we're learning about the different vocal resonators and how to build a character and add certain gestures. And I'm like, whoa, that's so interesting. And I just felt myself lean in. And I feel like just throughout my life, I've allowed myself to, and there's definitely times I've lost my way, but there's been that like little voice that's like, ooh, like maybe try that, like maybe investigate that, and just experimenting with different things. So I like the media. I love all the different mediums and I like them in different ways. Like acting for theater is so distinct from acting for film. They're both very challenging, but there's definitely, I don't want to say I like it better, but like I've really been missing the stage lately. So I've been keeping my eyes open for just different theatrical opportunities. And there's just something about being on a stage. You're living, you're breathing there with other people. You can hear the audience living and breathing with you. There's this like collective experience that's live that you can't say cut, you can't say pause, you can't call line. I mean, you could, but it's going to like break the fourth wall, right? And it's like there's this ultimate state of trust that's there that I just really is really, really exciting. And but yeah, I love the solitary aspect of writing, but there's also times that I've written with other people, like when I've done one woman shows and helped people co-write their one woman shows. Like that was like a really collaborative thing where it just felt like it was mutually growing and evolving, but together, both parties. And that's like just a really cool feeling and experience. There's something about directing that has me. I prep. It's not like I don't prep at all. Like I prep, but it's probably of all of the things, the thing that comes the most natural to me, if that makes sense. And I think it's just because I've coached a lot, and there's something about being one-on-one with someone or multiple people, and like you're fully over there with them when they're performing, and you're able to tell like, oh, like this is where they're blocked right here, or this is where they have some sort of concern about this line, or oh, they're pushing at this line. Like, and it is this very like cool symbiotic, like you're almost like one and they're doing it, but it's like you're there with them and you're almost like guiding them in this very like ethereal magical realm. Like I know this sounds very woo-woo, but that's like kind of my experience.
No,
like,
makes
I love
sense.
the way it feels to be that present with other human beings, where your only intention is on having them break through something or them fulfill a certain intention that you're trying to create together. I think it's just I like the way it feels.
Yeah. And it's that way, I think, in any creative process, but especially with filmmaking. I think that whole idea of being there together, and you're kind of in it together. So good or bad, you kind of go through those experiences together.
Yeah.
Speaking of planning, like in your documentary work, are you the kind of director that will, bulletin board plan everything out, or are you one that says, let's just get out there and see what we find?
I think it's a combination of both, similar to when I've directed narrative shorts or theater. It's like you plan and you create the intention as much as possible. And so much of the time, because you plan, then you are able to get on the court on location and just kind of let it rip. And it's kind of cool that you can plan and plan and plan and plan, but usually the most extraordinary shot is the one that the idea that comes to you like on the fly, like, let's just go grab this. Or like you'll be there interviewing someone and you can tell that they're not fully opened up to you yet, or they're being a little performative. And then you just get a download of like, ask them this, and then you ask them that. And then that opens up a world. Like you see them really show themselves authentically. Like, those are my favorite, those little magical download things that happen.
I love those, don't you? I mean, it's just when you, like you said, I've experienced that too, where you're asking questions and you're like, okay, we got to get a breakthrough here. We got to, get some sound out of this person. But then you do hit on something, and then you just see it change in their eyes, and they're like, and then you click. And so then you just open up this whole new dialogue. It's just awesome.
Yeah. I recently, I'm in my, I call it Carly's Oscar challenge. This is my third year of having seen all of the Oscar nominated films.
Oh, wow.
And when I watch like, the feature length documentaries or the documentary shorts, the ones for me that are the best are obviously there's got to be like a clarity and like a clearness to the story, but the ones where the filmmakers were able to cut through the surface level of when people are talking about themselves and allow people to really show themselves. And I just think it's, yes, there's a level of trust that you have to experience between that, the documentarian and the actual person participating. But I think there's also this, just this kind of magic that seems to happen when you ask the right question and when something just totally opens up. So there, a lot of my any criticism or praise when I was watching those were they able to do this in a way where they're telling a story, but it's not so controlled or so manipulated or so performative, where I get the most humanity, like the most humanness that I can possibly see. And also just like, how does it make me feel? I feel like that's the biggest barometer for any sort of film.
That's absolutely. Yeah. How does it make you feel? That's any art form, I think, is where you want to go with that. If you can make, it doesn't sound maybe good if you make people cry, but if you can pull some emotion, that's, you've hit on something when you can make them laugh or cry or be angry.
Yeah. Or just leave the theater and not be able to stop talking about it, or leave the, theater can double as theater for stage or for film. And they just can't, they can't shut up about it because it's activated something in them. Like my least favorite, because I see all sorts of films. I see the big blockbusters. I see the indie films that I'm like probably one of the only people that has seen them. It's, how does it make me feel? And also, what was the point? If I leave a film and it's kind of like, like schmeh either way, it's like basic or schmeh, and I don't know what the point was, that to me is like the most disappointing. And it happens, but it's,
I agree.
I'm sure I've made art like that.
What's that? I'm sorry.
I'm sure I've made art like that.
Me too.
Like a judgment thing. Like we all have to, keep creating art to get better at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with authenticity. It's like sometimes sometimes there was some films this year where I'm like, wow, this like felt really performative, or this felt really like inauthentic. And then I like looked and did some research. I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like, it's like, if you see a filmmaker and like the filmmaker can't truly answer like why for them, like that film must be made. And it wasn't just studio is just matching up a director with a project. It's like, what is this filmmaker so passionate about? Why this film? Why now? What is the point for them? And so often when that's not authentic and it's just, they're just trying to pair up people for the money, or they're maybe trying to do a topic or something that's trendy, that's when like, I don't think, even if people can't say, oh, I didn't like this because it was inauthentic, like people can sense that. People can be like, like, I don't know why I didn't like it. They can't really explain it, but they just find themselves kind of like leaning back and being disengaged. Like strategy. I feel like it's funny. I'm a very strategic person as I say this. So it's like I have to consciously work against my own strategy. But I do feel like sometimes strategy is the enemy of creativity.
I get that. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, because sometimes the best creative moments come out of, you never thought it was going to happen. Just like we were talking about the interviews, who would have known that somebody would say something so great when you didn't have that as a planned question or an idea or topic. So I totally get that. You're also, speaking of documentaries, you're also involved in a lot of social and worldly issues. Do we have that as a responsibility as artists, do you think, and filmmakers to find projects that maybe don't get as much press or are underreported, something that, of course, we have to have, I think, an interest in it to take it on. But I heard something interesting one time from a filmmaker. She said a lot of times they'll pick stories that they don't really know anything about just to learn about the subject matter as they go along. I thought that was interesting.
I mean, that sounds super interesting. My husband, I joke with him, he's full of random facts. So he loves anything to do with history. So yeah, I remember he had this voiceover gig once where he had to read articles and he was like nerding out about it because he was getting to learn as he was doing it.
That's great.
No, I definitely think, I don't know. I feel like naturally almost all the artists that I know, feel a certain, I don't like the word obligation, but feel a certain, almost like, Like it's kind of just part of our commitment as artists to tell good stories and to address issues. But again, going back to authenticity, I think if we are being our authentic selves, we will naturally tell the stories and talk about the issues that we relate to and that are authentic for us, and that though it will address those things versus me being like, you know, what's a really big issue right now? This. I'm going to try to make a story about this, even if it has nothing related to do to my like own personal experience. And it's not that you like can't, you know, there's a lot of times filmmakers do, but I think it requires like care and it requires a commitment and a lot of research. And there's definitely been times I've seen things where I'm like, I read an article, I think it was about Christopher Nolan and Interstellar. And he was like, you know, and then I was like, why not make the lead character a woman? And I was like, so it's like he just wrote it from his perspective, and then he just like swapped the gender, which, you know, great. It was great opportunity for Jessica Chastain, but it's like there was nothing when I was watching it that had me feel truly connected to her or something like moved. And like I often will, you know, share this on my various social medias, like talking specifically with male artists or male directors or screenwriters, is like and it goes the same thing with, you know, women screenwriters. It's like if you're writing a gender or a sexual orientation or a race that is not your own, what are you going to do to make sure that you honor that and that it's authentic, that it's not just something that you're putting in there so that it can be trendy or that because it came from your mind or whatever. Like if you have a lead character or woman and you're a male screenwriter, like have you talk to other women about what is their experience like as a woman that's unique to them? Because I promise you, if you don't, and you try to go from like just guessing, it's probably not going to be very good.
Yeah. No, you're right.
It's probably not going to really like hit home. And I've seen it so often in things where I'm like, oh, great, they're doing like the strong female lead, but like there's nothing nuanced or specific or authentic about what I'm seeing that actually rings true for my experience or other women that I talk to. And it's not that it can't be done. It's just really, I think it's just really important. I don't think people take the level of care often to do that. So that kind of is like speaking to what I'm saying is like, and that's why I also think why representation and equity and opportunities in the entertainment industry and equity of funding is so important, because I actually think there is an abundance of money and there's an abundance of stories to tell. So I don't think that people need to worry and try to, well, maybe I, you know, pick this one trend or this one issue to try to get attention, even if it has nothing to do with their unique experience. It's like, why aren't we just giving filmmakers that have those unique experiences or tapped into those issues opportunities to make those films? Like there's enough room at the table for all of us. And I think that if we have that commitment to telling authentic stories and having everyone have an opportunity versus our own focus on like, am I making it? Is my art being told, which can sometimes happen? Then I think it's just going to be a more like diverse, beautiful ecosystem of art and stories being told for all people.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And I think that kind of goes back to the subject matter that you pick to tell. If we want to talk about documentaries, you know, it's something that you want to get out there. You want to shine a light on, like the film you did about deforestation, shadows in the forest. Did you tell me about how that came about? Was that an issue that you really wanted to kind of put out there and bring people to it?
So interesting. Yeah, that was such an extraordinary opportunity. There was a scholarship through my university that basically paid for the pre-production, the production of us actually going to Cameroon, Africa, and then the post-production of that. So just the opportunity of the fact that I got to travel, that I got to, you know, create art while I was traveling, was just extraordinary. So we knew the country that we were going to, and we just began researching because we wanted the documentary. The purpose of the scholarship was to have the films basically be like a PSA or an advertisement that could be used for the NGO that we were doing the film about. So a non-government agency. And we ended up finding the non-government agency for this specific that was working with these Indigenous communities that were being forced to the side of the road. And there was just something about it that we were like, that's it. Because there was multiple other groups that were working with us as well and going to different parts of the country that they found other NGOs that they were working with. So I don't know. It was a while ago, so I don't necessarily remember what it was that in particular. I definitely didn't go like, we're going to go tell a story about deforestation. But in our research of looking into these different companies, we found this company. We were like, there's something about it. Like we gotta look more into this.
Yeah. But what an experience. Like you said, I mean, be able to travel and
I'm still like, every time I think about it, it's just like, my heart's like so open. It's like such, I love traveling, and I traveled as much as I could in college and took out as many scholarships and like, debt just to be able to do it, because I knew that it would get harder as I got older, and I just wanted to, soak everything up. So I've had a couple unique opportunities when I was in college to be able to travel and go live in a different country and then work on my art there. And that's just like, that's the dream. I want to be doing that 24/7 all over the world. Sign me up. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Well, let's do it together. Let's go. Let's make it happen.
I got the jet.
Let's go. I got to ask you about You Are Not Your Hair, because it's such a great, I love the idea behind this. Tell me about that and how this all happened. It's such a cool idea. I just loved it.
I was in this class. I was in this self-development class, and I don't know, the leader of it was talking about something, and I was like sitting there kind of like looking at my own life. And I had always had a thought. I don't remember how long I had this thought where I was like, it'd be so cool to shave my head. But I've also had thoughts of like, there's like certain things that have been on the bucket list. Like also I want to like kick down a door, cock a shotgun with one hand and like shoot it at one point in my life too. But I haven't done that yet. So
That's next.
I lived in those kind of places. Like at some point I want to do this.
Yeah.
And I was like sitting there in the class, and I had this realization. I'm like, like I keep waiting for like some role, or when I was on semester at sea in college, like they have Neptune's Day where you like when you go across the equator, like it's tradition for mariners to like shave their heads. But like we got really close to the equator, but we like didn't cross it. I was like, rats, like I can't do it then. and it was like kind of this realization of like, this is my life. Who am I waiting for to give me permission to do this?
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. And it happened to coincide with me, fundraising money to go on this service trip to South Africa, where I was working with this company called Think Impact. And there was a bunch of undergraduate students from college students from America, and they were going to be in this village. And I was going to be like their advisor and kind of guiding them and leading them as they worked on to create some sort of, it was like basically asset-based curriculum, like community development. So instead of like what's typical with a lot of when people go into a lot of countries, it's like very needs based. They'll go in and they'll be like, well, what do you need? What are you lacking? But this was different. This was going in and being like, well, having it be much more directed instead of this kind of like Western or white savior approach of like, we know better and let us, all these stories where you hear that they like go and build a well. And then the people are like, we actually didn't need you to build that well. The community that likes to go and walk to that well, it was actually a part of our culture. And like, now you've like messed it up. You're like, whatever.
Right.
Go and build a library. And they're like, well, no one in this, and they fill it with a bunch of like English speakers, like not anybody in this community or barely any people like know how to read English. Like, why are you doing that? So it's the opposite of that, where it was putting the attention on them of like, well, what do you already have? And what do you want to do to improve your community or make your community stronger, kind of thing. And I don't work with the company anymore. I definitely think there's always a little bit of that like white savior thing going on, but it was such an extraordinary opportunity when I saw that it was happening. Anyway, I digress. So I'm in the class, and I I was like, what am I waiting for? Waiting for someone to give me permission to shave my head. And then it coincided with like, I was going to be going to South Africa. I was fundraising money for this trip. And I was like, I'm going to shave my head and I'm going to have some of the perks of this campaign be like, you can buy the first shave. You can buy pictures of me shaving my head. If you donate this much money, I'll bring you a souvenir back. If you donate this much money, I'll give you the link to like my blog while I'm there, et cetera, et cetera. So it kind of just evolved into that. And when I first did it, I felt so vulnerable and I felt so beautiful and I felt like my true self. It was like a trip. It also was like weird because I could feel the different sensations on my head. Cause I was like bald, like I'd go in and out of different rooms and feel the different like prickles and things like that. So then it started there and it kind of coincided with this. It just kind of like everything coincided very holistically in my life with like what I was like going to do for work. And then I was shaving my head. And right around that time, I was like starting to realize how certain food impacted my body. So I started to become like vegetarian and then vegan. It was like, I lost like a bunch of weight. I wasn't like trying to do all this stuff. It was just like a very, it was just like a very like spiritual, like holistic experience that I didn't really plan. Yeah. And then when I came back, I was in this other class and it was supposed to be about creating some sort of event that impact a community and that is of service and then becomes bigger than you. And I just started sharing with people and inviting other men and women to shave their heads. And I met a couple of people who were producers and documentarians, and they wanted to follow me and watch the journey of this and watch the event. And we got like all of these hairdressers to volunteer. We got like a couple of different organizations that we were donating money to. We raised over $2,000 for charity. And it was just like, every time I think back on that event, it was just like, there was so much love, there was so much joy and like freedom and self-expression, like just present, like a palpable presence. And I remember I was smiling so big, like my face hurt from smiling. And it was something that I'm the most proud of that I've ever done. And it was so cool. And I've kept the do ever since.
Well, you look great with it. I think it looks cool. I like it.
Thank you. I didn't know. I there was a little bit of a fear of like, what if I have a really weird shaped head?
That's always the fear, right? If you're gonna shave it off.
Yeah.
Did it also give? And I don't know if I read this on your website, but correct me if I'm wrong. But it also was a statement about how women shouldn't be viewed just in their physical beauty. There should be a way to, and maybe that was in the business specifically, or maybe it was just any industry at all. But I really like that part of it, like to kind of make a statement about that.
Yeah, we specifically chose organizations. I believe it was the Representation Project. And then we also chose henna heels, which they came and did the like various henna crowns on their heads. But yeah, it was really, it kind of just naturally evolved where I felt so vulnerable and so beautiful, but it was, funny because I had hair before. And I remember being like times where I thought my hair looked bad and then I looked bad. And it's not like I was cousin it and I like hid behind my hair or anything.
Right.
It was very obvious once I shaved my head how much hair is wrapped up in our self-expression and our presentation as women specifically. And just, I had people interact with me. People assumed that I was going through chemo and various things. And I also had like chemo survivors come up to me and be like inspired and think. And I made so many extraordinary connections that it was so unexpected. And this was back in 2013. Like it's become kind of like a new trend now. Like the joke is that I see like so many baldies like all over the place, especially if I go to like the East Side or like any sort of like Silver Lake like bar or whatever. But like there was like times I would like, it was obvious to me, people would just like stare, like mouth dropped open, like wouldn't even try to hide that they were gawking at me.
Really?
And
wow.
It was just interesting. It was more of just a really interesting kind of experiment that I didn't really think, I'm going to do this and as an experiment, like all of the things that I discovered. But as I was asking people and inviting people to shave their heads for charity and being like, okay, you can have people sponsor you. We're going to donate the hair. And I wasn't judging anybody, but some of the responses, particularly from women that I experienced, was literally acting like I was asking the most extreme thing in the world. Like I was asking them, will you cut your arm off and give it to me? You know? And what I was starting to discover as I was planning it is, wow, this is so interesting. Like hair means so much to everyone. It may mean different things, but it still means something to this gender or this race or this culture. Like how interesting that there's so much significance attached to this thing. And me ironically feeling like my truest self and most authentic when it wasn't there anymore, when it no longer was something that I could style or do. And it was just like, here it is. Here's my face. You know,
this is me. Yeah,
this is me. So it's just one of those beautiful serendipitous kind of things of like, I don't think I went in with like, I'm going to shave my head. And I definitely didn't go in like, I'm going to shave my head and prove to people that women aren't their hair. But in the me shaving my head, what it opened up was that I discovered that. And that's how the event kind of came together.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean, you think about that and it's true. We take, I guess maybe women more than men, but the hair is just such styling it and everything. It's just, it is sort of a security. It's kind of there's a lot of things that are rolled up into it for sure.
Yeah.
And the cancer, so that's interesting. People would come up to you, and I bet that was a weird experience to have to kind of explain to them what was going on. And
it was definitely a weird experience. I mean, I have some jokes, not like jokes about cancer, but jokes about in my stand-up about just all the different things. I had people assume that I was Buddhist. I had like a Buddhist monk like bow to me on the bus and like give me a book. And it's like, I wasn't going to like chase after him and try to be like, I'm not Buddhist, but I graciously accepted the book that he gave me. And I never ever pretended. I always would tell people, but I think what it opened up, the vulnerability of me being completely bald. And I think also just like feeling really beautiful and that kind of shining through, I think created this safe space for people to come and talk to me about it. Cause I had people come up and say like, oh, I'm a cancer survivor. Oh my gosh. And then like, when I told them I wasn't, but they started sharing with me about their experience, or like I have alopecia or And then I also just found like all of these extraordinary bald women that like came and spoke at the event that, you know, she was a cancer survivor and she just, for her, like kept it as this like empowerment thing. And then some women who were bald for spiritual reasons and all these different things. And I was like, it was just so cool.
Oh, that's very cool, man. It was that's an amazing experience. Wow. So you never probably imagined that would go that far when you first started it, right? I mean, that you would meet so many cool people. You know, this business, I guess really the world can really beat you up sometimes. Do you have something that like a go-to that gets you through the tough days and keeps you getting up every morning? What's your kind of way to unwind and just stay positive?
I have so many, because you got to have a lot of tools in your toolbox.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think it depends. I think it depends on the specificity of what I can tell that I need. Sometimes if I'm exhausted and I can tell the biggest thing that's going to make a difference is like, I got to literally just go binge a couple episodes of some fluff sitcom. Like sometimes like that's the thing. Yeah. Sometimes it's for me going for a walk, going to play with my dogs. Journaling is a really big one for me that it allows me to get all of it like out of my head. Meditation is really, really important. I use that a lot. Sometimes I literally am like, I'm just going to put on like my favorite song and like dance and just like move and wiggle and like get it all out. But I really, and going to the movies, and I think that, I mean, it makes sense with what my, artistry is. It's like, I love going to the movies by myself. It's like such a special, sacred. I love going to the movies with other people too. I go to the movies with my husband all the time, but like there's also like a distinctness of when I go alone and I don't have to like be like, oh, let's go see something that we both want to see, or da 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 da. And like, you're in the room with like other strangers experiencing something. That's also something that I do. I mean, storytelling and art in any form, it literally takes you to other realms of consciousness and other frequencies. But if I had to pick one, music for me is the most like instantaneous, like transformer, accesses me immediately starts to make me feel something, depending on what it is.
That's we're alike in that. I think that's music can really take you places. You can go back in time. It's like a time machine. You can really remember times in your life that where you were when you heard that music, or times where you're happy when you heard it. So yeah, totally get that.
I also
Carly,
sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. No, I didn't mean to step on you.
Something. I also think it's important. So like overall, I think it's important to maintain a positive view of the world and have an empowering context and all of that. But I also think sometimes we can wash over feelings of disappointment or feelings of sadness because we don't want to feel them. Like we want to sweep under the rug. We want to stay positive. Like, sometimes it's a little gross when you see things online where it's like good vibes only. It's like, yeah, but we're also like humans.
Right. You don't have good days every day.
To like have anything messier. So anyway, I think above all, depending on what I'm feeling, the most important thing for me is to fully feel it with my feelings. Like whether it's like letting myself fully sob, letting myself like be fully angry, because I spent too much of my life thinking that I could push it down or sweep it under the rug. It's just not, it doesn't work. It's like, and unfortunately it doesn't feel the best sometimes. It's like, but you kind of do have to move through emotions to get to the other side and discover maybe what the lesson is, if there is a lesson, like what action you might be able to take. I think that there's a difference between if I'm just feeling a little funky and I notice that my mind starts to have thoughts and spiral and want to take me to like being like utterly bummed out about something, that I can redirect and be like, okay, these are some things that, listening to music, something to like, nope, not going to go there. But there are times where I can tell like, no, like this is something you're authentically that's coming up, you're feeling, you got to feel it. But the only important thing for me is that I just don't stay there, that I don't stay there, that I don't wallow there, but I never stay there for long. But I do think it's important because that is on the spectrum of human emotions that we create and put into our art, So it's important that I just wanted to say that in case there was someone watching where they might have interpreted that as don't let yourself feel things, because I don't feel that way.
Oh no, I love that. I think so. It's like let your body feel the way you feel and just get through it. Just get through let the emotion wash over you and learn what you can from it. It kind of goes back to that authenticity idea. It's like that's authentic by letting it wash over you and taking from it and not push it down, because it's still going to be there. It's going to come up again in ugly times. It's going to pop back up.
Well, and speaking to like the authenticity of it, it's like my number one thing for when I'm dealing with bitterness, anger, frustration, whatever emotion, is the number one way that I work through it is I put it in my art. Like that's the only, because that is what we do as artists.
Yep, for sure.
That is how we communicate, and that is how we like open our heart and have our authenticity be in our art. It's like everything that I've ever written that a character is going through is because I was dealing with that and going through that. And the only way I could see myself truly through it was to try to write about it or try to act it out or to try, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Let your characters kind of work through that. And then you're like, it's a weird thing. It's like you're watching your characters work it out and you're like, oh, it makes you feel better. Brings you out of that. It's like you're putting your emotion into a script or a story. Yeah. And you're just watching everything kind of unfold.
Yeah. And it goes back to like, there's so many things happening in our world that we can't control. And what always comes back for me is like, well, what I do have control over is what I create and my art. And my art is my resistance. and me having joy in my life is my resistance. And sometimes that's the only thing that I can do that feels like I have any control or power over it. And that's what we want anyway from our art. We want art that feels like, sounds dramatic, but that like somebody like literally opens their heart and like puts a piece of it onto the page or on the stage. Like that's the thing that has us be able to feel deeply and has us be, get chills and us work through relationships in our own life and whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we're blessed in that way to be able to do that, be able to work things out in our art and as creatives. It's a special field for sure. Carly, you are so amazing. I've loved spending time with you, and thank you so much I hope you come back, and please stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Ditto. Thank you. I would love to come back.
Awesome.
I love talking about this stuff. I could talk about it forever.
Me too. I'd love to have you back. What are you working on right now? Where can people find you or find some of your work online or?
Yeah. I've taken a very big break from Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can still find me on there and follow me. It's just not as active. You can find me. I'm most active on Blue Sky. It's just my name, Carly Tatiana Pandza. You can find me on there. And I've been more active on my Sacred Storytelling podcast that's on Spotify and my YouTube. And same thing, Carly Tatiana Pandza. You can always find me on my website. I'm always going to be polishing that up soon. So you can always go on there, subscribe to my newsletter, stay connected with me there.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, my friend. It's great to see you. And please come back.
Thank you.
Happiness Sold Separately is created and hosted by Jason Hensley and is produced by Makash Films. Narration by Lauren Gobis. If you or someone you know is in crisis and needs immediate help, call the National Mental Health Hotline at 866-903-3787. We would be honored if you would rate, share, and subscribe. From the entire Happiness Sold Separately team, thank you for listening.